Hello everyone, welcome back. In today's video, we have another news and rumor video here to discuss. We've got some signings to talk about, some injury updates, a couple of small pieces of news, and we've got a couple of other trade updates involving the Hawks, the Predators, and the Flyers. We'll touch on all these coming up right now. Hello everyone, welcome back to another video here at the End-to-End Hockey channel. Now before we begin this video, do not forget to like this video and subscribe down below. Thank you for all of your support. I would never be able to do this without all of you guys, so if you haven't already, don't forget to hit the subscribe button down below. Don't forget to leave a comment. We're on the road to 1,000 subscribers and try and hit 650 in the next couple of weeks, so if you can leave a subscribe, it really does help with the channel. Let YouTube know you guys like this content. On top of that, don't forget to stay tuned for more videos coming on in the very near future. I also started a support page on Buy Me a Coffee. I'll leave a link to it in the description below. I think you can also view it on my YouTube channel in the links. It's just a little bit of a way for you guys to help support me. So if you have a little bit of extra change and you like what I do here, you want to support the channel, go to make a donation. It really does help with the channel. And on top of that, if you haven't already, check out last week's live stream for the trade deadline. I think you guys really like it. But in today's video, we do have another news and rumor video here to discuss. So we do have a handful of signings to start off here with this video. Most of these are just college level players, so I'll just really quickly go through them. There are a couple more interesting signings, but we'll get through the college ones first. So Brody Lamb, who's a right winger, he is currently under contract now with the New York Rangers. He was a 4th round pick back in 2021 of the New York Rangers. Signs a 2-year ELC that'll begin to start next year with the AAV of $980,000. He's been playing over in the NCAA, having a pretty good season so far this year, having 14 goals and 30 points in 35 games. Not a bad pickup here. Eventually might be able to be rounding out into like a really solid bottom 6 forward. So not a bad pickup here for the Rangers, signing a 4th rounder from I think nearly 5 years ago. Then 23-year-old right shot defenseman Gustav Stjernberg, who is a defenseman, of course. He's an undrafted player, has signed a 2-year contract with AAV of $980,000 with the Colorado Avalanche. That'll be at the start of next year. Stjernberg has also been playing over in the NCAA, putting up 6 goals and 10 points in 25 games. Not bad production, especially for a defenseman. I think eventually might be able to challenge for like a 3rd pair role, but still, it's just another NCAA sign there for the Avs. Then we have a little bit of a homecoming here. 23-year-old center prospect Tyson Gross, who's another undrafted player, has signed a 2-year contract with the Calgary Flames. It's actually his hometown team with an AAV of $975,000. That is for this year and next year, so it's backdated to this year, so he might be able to get into a couple of games with the Flames at the NHL level before the end of the season. So very interesting to note there. He was from Calgary, so it's a little bit of a homecoming for him. He was also playing over the NCAA, actually been one of the better NCAA players, putting up 18 goals, 41 points in 36 games, was a highly touted prospect, and he winds up going and playing with his hometown team, so that's really good news there. And Gross will be signed for this year and next year after this contract. And then right winger Noah Powell, who's a 21-year-old prospect. He's a 5th round pick back in the 2024 draft, so a very recent 5th round pick. Has got himself a 3-year ELC with AAV of $985,000 that'll start at the beginning of next year. Once again, this is another prospect that was playing over in the NCAA, having 7 goals and 12 points in 34 games, so not too surprising there. He's had some pretty good production. Eventually could be a bottom 6 forward there for Philadelphia. So once again, another really solid college signing prospect here with the Philadelphia Flyers. And then we have a couple of more contract extension type things. So first, Calle Rosen, who's on a 1-year deal right now with the St. Louis Blues, was traded there in season from the Washington Capitals. Has played with the St. Louis Blues in a couple of times at different stints over the past few seasons. Winds up getting himself a contract extension. The 32-year-old gets a 2-year extension with the AAV of $875,000. Rosen's not an everyday NHL defenseman, plays mostly at the AHL level, but is a very serviceable guy who can be called upon and be like a decent 3rd pair defenseman in times of need when there's like injuries or things like that. So this isn't a bad pickup. It's a very under the radar sort of good deal. The contract's completely variable, so they can bury him in the minors if need be. So far this year, had 7 goals and 26 points in 47 games over in Springfield, which is the AHL affiliates for the St. Louis Blues. So I think this is a really good pickup here, adding some solid defensive depth for the next couple of years. Not a bad pickup here for St. Louis. Then we saw San Jose Sharks send one of their pending free agents to a new deal. Pending RFA Ty Dellandrea, who was in the 2nd year of a 2-year deal with AAV of $1.3 million, has wound up signing a 2-year contract extension with San Jose with an AAV of $1.625 million. So he was drafted by Dallas, traded to San Jose a couple of years ago. Really solid bottom 6 forward in San Jose's organization. Currently injured, still a couple of injuries this year. Has 2 goals and 11 points in 42 games, but I think he has a pretty solid ceiling of like maybe being like a 30 to 40 point player. Now, I'm not sure how much time he'll get with San Jose given how deep that team is, but he does get a 2-year extension and will remain with the San Jose Sharks for the foreseeable future. So very interesting note there. But the Sharks signed Dellandrea to a 2-year extension. And then the last signing here is probably the biggest NCAA prospect who has actually gotten a contract extension, and that is Luke Mittelstadt. Mittelstadt's a 23-year-old left shot defensive prospect, was a 7th round pick back in the 2023 draft. I think he's the brother of Casey Mittelstadt. He gets a 2-year ELC with the Montreal Canadiens, the team who drafted him, with an AAV of $1.013 million. Not a bad pickup here. Mittelstadt, as a defenseman, put up 2 goals and 21 points in 36 NCAA games, so not half bad there, and he's going to go over to the NHL or the AHL as of next year. So really good stuff there. Mittelstadt was one of the better prospects the Habs currently have, so that's a pretty good sign there for Montreal. So those are all signings from our past couple of days. Lots of very interesting ones. Next, we're going to go over to a couple of injury updates. So we saw a handful of injury updates from our past couple of days. First, Dylan Larkin and Andrew Copp, who we both talked about in our last video, as both having suffered injuries. They're both lower body injuries, looks like potentially leg injuries. Todd McClellan did come out and say they're going to be out at least the next 2 weeks, and at that point they'll be reevaluated. So for the next 2 weeks, probably a good 6 or 7 games, Detroit will be without their top 2 centers. So that's a terrible blow. The Red Wings are on the cusp of making the playoffs, but Columbus and Ottawa are both right behind them. So yeah, that's not going to be good there for the Detroit Red Wings. Colton Dach, who left Tuesday's game for the Edmonton Oilers with undisclosed injury, was placed on long-term injured reserve. So a bad blow there for the Oilers to lose this really solid bottom 6 forward who they just acquired at the deadline, and Dach for the foreseeable future. Cole Caulfield missed Wednesday's game with an illness and is out day-to-day, so that's not great news there for the Habs, as Caulfield's a huge piece, but it seems like it's just a short-term thing, so he hopefully should be back in the next game or two. JT Miller will be actively off of injury reserve and return to game action on Saturday after missing just over a week with upper body injuries, so that's great news there to see Captain Miller potentially back in the lineup later today on Saturday. Austin Matthews suffered a grade 3 MCL tear and is done for the season. He'll be reevaluated in 2 weeks, but it seems like Matthews is done. He suffered a terrible knee-on-knee hit by Radko Gudas, which we'll talk about in a minute, but that was a terrible hit, in my opinion, by Radko Gudas. It's ended Austin Matthews' season. He's had a whole bunch of career lows. He just got back on the score sheet earlier in the game before he wound up leaving it, so a terrible blow there for Austin Matthews. Well, Mark Stone, who missed a week and a half with upper body injury, was active off of injury reserve and returned to game action on Thursday. So that was a massive boost for the Knights. They have a relatively healthy lineup besides William Karlsson for the first time in a while, and it showed. They destroyed Pittsburgh over on Thursday 6-2, so great stuff there for Vegas, as Stone might have been the missing piece. So very interesting out there, but some very interesting injury updates from our past couple of days. Next, going over to a couple of really quick recalls and reassignments. When it comes to some recalls, due to the injuries to Larkin and Copp, Sheldon Dries was recalled by Detroit. Due to the injury to Colton Dach, Max Jones was recalled by Edmonton to provide some added defensive depth with still a couple of players injured. The Florida Panthers have recalled Mike Benning. With the inconsistent play of the Habs' current goaltenders, they've once again recalled Jacob Fowler, and he was brilliant over on Wednesday against the Ottawa Senators. Alex Alexiev was recalled by the Pittsburgh Penguins once again to provide some added defensive insurance. Igor Chernyshov was recalled by the San Jose Sharks, the young Russian player who was doing really good earlier in the season, to back up with the NHL club. We'll see if he gets into some NHL action. The Sharks have also called Laurent Brossoit because they're dealing with some injuries to some of their goaltenders, so just want to have Brossoit up there just in case one of them is not able to go. And Michael Pozzetto was recalled by the Toronto Maple Leafs, and it sounds like he'll probably get a little bit of a stint here at the NHL level, so very interesting note there. Some very interesting recalls. While Drew Commesso in Chicago was reassigned, the Hawks did have a couple of potential problems with their netminders, but they're good now, so Commesso is going back down to the AHL. After recalling them on an emergency basis due to the Larkin and Copp injuries, Tralmax and Leonard have both been reassigned to the AHL by the Detroit Red Wings. Not too surprising there. They'll go back to playing at the AHL level, as will Austin Watson, also in Detroit. And then Steven Santini in Tampa was also reassigned to the AHL level. So very interesting note there. A really solid assignment there. We'll see how Santini does the AHL level, but they didn't need him anymore at the NHL level. So very interesting to note there. But those are some very interesting recalls and reassignments. And last year, going over to a couple of small pieces of news. So first, when it comes to the Ottawa Senators, the Senators have officially gotten their first round pick back. As you guys remember, I was back, I think, 2 years ago that was announced that because of the botched Donov deal from Vegas to Anaheim, due to the fact that Ottawa never transferred Donohov's trade protection or mentioned it to Vegas. As a part of the earlier Ottawa-Vegas deal involving the Donov, they were fined their first round pick. It was either going to be 2 years ago, last year, or this year, and they picked the last 2 years, so they were expecting it to be missing this year. Then just after the trade deadline, so they didn't move it, the NHL wound up giving them the pick back. So there is some protections about this. This pick will be locked in at 32, and the Senators cannot trade it. So they're only going to be picking 32. They can't move up. Even if they were to miss the playoffs and be in the draft lottery, they're stuck at 32. And on top of that, they cannot trade it. And they also have to pay $1 million fee for getting their pick back, but they do wind up getting their pick. So they will have a first round pick. It'll just be locked into the 32 spot. I know a lot of people are very upset about this, but this is very similar to the Kovalchuk situation all those years ago, where the Devils lost the first round pick due to the Kovalchuk situation. But then right before the draft, they got their pick back. So this is a very similar situation to that. They don't get the benefits of potentially having to be in the draft lottery or anything like that if they do miss the playoffs, but they at least get their first round pick back. So that's not terrible news there. Also sticking with Ottawa, them and the Chicago Blackhawks are apparently going to Germany next year to play a Global Series game over in Germany. It's going to be just before Christmas in December 2026. The Senators and the Blackhawks will play in Germany as part of the Global Series games. So very interesting note there, but expect the Senators and the Blackhawks to be playing over in Germany in December later this year as part of next year's season. So very interesting note there. When it comes to Radko Gudas, we talked about how he just injured Auston Matthews with a blatant intent to injure sort of play, really sent Matthews out of the season basically. He has earned himself a 5-game suspension. That's his 5th suspension of his career. So very interesting note there. I think it's a deserved suspension. I'm surprised it was not a little bit more. I thought maybe 6, 7, 8 games. The fact they only got 5 is a little bit surprising in my opinion, but still, like, that was a blatant intent to injure sort of play, and I think he should have been suspended for that. I'm just surprised it's not more suspended. So very interesting note there, but that was the suspension on Radko Gudas after he basically ended Matthews' season. So very interesting note there. And then when it comes to John Carlson, LeBrun was talking about this regarding a potential extension. LeBrun said that Carlson was a little bit blindsided by the fact that he got moved, so he's going to take the next month to sort of discuss with family and representatives and things like that about his move and what his future looks like. And he says that if the Ducks were to try and extend John Carlson, which it sounds like they're planning on doing, LeBrun says that that sort of return that he gave up to the Washington Capitals was so that he could probably try and extend him. He says that it sounds like if Carlson was to extend at this point in time, it'd be like a 2-year deal at around $8 to $9 million, which does make some sense. Like, he is on the older side of things, so only a short-term 2 to 3 year deal makes a ton of sense. $8 to $9 million for an aging veteran might be a little bit expensive, but the Ducks, they're a team who has a whole bunch of cap space, and I think they can make that work. So very interesting note there, but it seems like Carlson will take until potentially close to the end of the season to decide if he wants to sign an extension or not. And it seems like the ask for Carlson will be like a 2-year deal around $8 to $9 million. So love to hear your thoughts in the comments if you think this is too much or too little, but love to hear your thoughts. And last year, going over to a couple of trade rumors. So we once again have 3 trade rumors here to talk about. Once again, not a ton of things being talked about as the trade deadline was just last week. So for the next couple of weeks, you probably won't have too much stuff, but there are a couple of things that are being speculated that could happen in the offseason. So the first one I want to talk about here is with David Pagnotta. He mentions that the Philadelphia Flyers could try and target a couple of goaltenders in the offseason. Now, this has been mentioned quite a bit of times. Vladar has been a really solid signing. He was signed in the offseason last year from the Calgary Flames and has worked pretty well as like a 1A goaltender for the Philadelphia Flyers. The problem for the Philadelphia Flyers is all of their 1B goaltenders have been nothing but basically garbage. Like, Ersson's numbers are tanked from where he was last year, and even last year he wasn't overly good. Kolosov, anytime he gets called up and to get thrown into game action, does not look good. So like, the Flyers are really with no backup option to Dan Vladar. I do view Vladar as the 1A tandem goaltender, but they do want to try and go after someone who can at least be a tandem goaltender, if not maybe take a couple of starts away from Vladar next year. So it sounds like they probably will move off of Ersson and maybe continue to have Kolosov at the AHL level. Wouldn't be surprised if Ersson didn't even get a qualifying offer. But it seems like 2 guys who they may target, according to Pagnotta, in the offseason for a goalie upgrade is Joseph Woll in Toronto and Jesper Wallstedt in Minnesota. Now, I personally still do not believe the Minnesota Wild will trade Jesper Wallstedt. Yes, I know Gustafsson's on a long-term contract, but Wallstedt has shown really good promise this year. You don't trade a guy like Jesper Wallstedt. Now, it sounds like if it was the right situation and the Wild were able to get some sort of a massive upgrade, they'd be be open to moving Wallstedt. I just don't think they should. But if the Flyers were open to moving like a guy like Tippett or Sean Couturier or something like that, I could see them potentially trying to acquire Wallstedt. Wall, I think, is a little bit more likely. The Leafs are very likely to move off a goaltender in the offseason, whether that's Woll, Stolarz, or Hildeby. I think Hildeby is most likely going to stay, but I think one of Woll or Stolarz will probably get dealt. And I think it's more likely Stolarz does, but I could see Woll get dealt. So that could be a guy who I could see Philadelphia target. I think is a very likely option to get dealt. And I think you put Woll and Vladar as a tandem. If Woll can stay healthy, that's a pretty dang good tandem. So all in all, those were two guys that Dave Pagnotta does mention the Flyers could target in the offseason to try and improve their goaltending situation. And I do agree on the Woll sense. I still don't think the Minnesota Wild will trade Jesper Wallstedt, but I guess time will tell. But keep your eye on the Philadelphia Flyers in the offseason as they search for a goaltender. Next, going over to just an article I came across. This wasn't from any sort of credible insight or anything. This was just an article that was just speculating on a couple of things. And one thing that caught my eye was the fact that maybe a guy who could be moved off the Blackhawks blue line, who's not getting a ton of playing time at the NHL level right now, is Kevin Korchinski. Now, Korchinski at one point was viewed as the Blackhawks' future on the blue line. He was a 7th overall pick, I think, back in the 21 or 22 draft. He was a really high-level, high-end pick as a defenseman, so he was touted as like one of the top-end players. But since then, Korchinski, over the past year or two, has basically been stuck in the AHL level, and guys have passed him on the depth charts, like Kaiser's at the NHL level, Crevier's at the NHL level, Lev Shinav's a regular at the NHL level, Rinzel's a regular at the NHL level. So the Hawks have a whole bunch of really solid young blue liners, but now it seems that Korchinski's not even being able to crack the lineup on a regular basis. So with that in mind, this article does mention maybe that it's time for a split, and Korchinski could get dealt in the offseason. We recently did see the Blackhawks move off a couple of prospects in Doc and Thompson, so maybe Korchinski's next. I would be very surprised if they do move Korchinski. I personally do think Korchinski is most likely to stay in Chicago and try and be a part of the solution there. But if the Hawks don't see a future with Korchinski, he's also a pending RFA this year, I could see him try and flip him. If they were able to acquire like maybe like a young forward who can really help them going forward, I could see it be a possibility. Like I said, I don't think it's a guarantee, but he is a pending RFA. If he doesn't feel like he has a path to the NHL on the Blackhawks defense, I could see Korchinski try and force his way out of Chicago with him being a pending RFA. So we'll have to wait and see on that. I personally do not see it, but we'll have to wait and see if Korchinski does wind up getting dealt in the offseason, so we'll have to wait and see on that. And lastly, going over to Roman Josi in the Nashville Predators organization. Now, Pierre Lebrun says that the moves at the deadline sort of blindsided Josi. He was surprised that they were moving off some pieces as they were in the thick of a playoff run. And because of that, Pierre Lebrun mentions that it sounds like Josi will have a sit down with the new management once they hire a new GM in the offseason and try and figure out what direction they're going. And he says that if the Preds management says that they're going through a full-blown sell and they're going to move off some of their veterans, there's a possibility Josi tries to force his way out of Nashville, because it sounds like Josi doesn't want to be any part of like a sort of tear down, retool type thing. And if they're going to move off veterans like Stamkos, like O'Reilly, like Marchessault in the offseason, it sounds like Josi might be a guy who'd be open to a fresh start too if the Preds are going through full sell mode. So once again, this is something for the offseason because new management hasn't even come in yet, but it's going to be something very interesting to keep an eye on because the Preds go into full sell mode in the offseason, which is a possibility. It sounds like Josi might be wanting a trade out of Nashville, and if Josi becomes available, there'll be a ton of teams interested because Josi has been a Norris favorite and a Norris finalist over the past couple of years in the Norris conversations. He's a really solid top pair defenseman. So once again, I'm not going to say it's a guarantee. He's the captain of the Predators. He's a really good player. And once again, if it's just a quick retool or something like that, then I think Josi will be open to staying. But if it's a full sell-off and the Predators are going through full tank mode next year, it sounds like Josi might be open to a fresh start. So we have to wait and see on that. Once again, no guarantees that he gets moved. I think it'll probably be more unlikely he gets moved, but once again, I don't think Josi at his age really wants to go through another rebuild. So once again, it's going to be a very interesting situation to watch out for in the offseason. But I'd love to get your thoughts down in the comment section below. Do you think Roman Josi gets moved in the offseason? Do you think Kevin Korchinski gets moved in the offseason? And could Woll or Wallstedt be the sort of solution the Philadelphia Flyers need in their crease? So definitely have your thoughts on all of that, plus all the other news we talked about earlier in the video. That's all I'm going to talk about for today. Remember to like this video. If you really liked it, remember to subscribe down below. Thank you for all of your support. support. I would never be able to do this with all of you guys, so if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe button down below. Don't forget to leave a comment. We're on the road to 1,000 subscribers. Don't forget to stay tuned for more videos coming in the very near future. I also do a blog, talking about news, rumors, analysis, stuff like that, so check that out. Leave into that in the description below. Can't wait to see you guys all for the next video. See you guys soon.